My name is Jack Malone. I'm 41 years old, born and raised in western Montana, in a town so small that everyone knew who got divorced before the paperwork was filed. I grew up around stubborn men and quiet mountains, both of them teaching you to keep your mouth shut and do what's right, even when it costs you, maybe especially then. I served 21 years in the military, spent the last decade in a unit most people only hear about when something goes wrong. Overseas, I've flown halfway around the world with nothing but a name and a reason. I've gone into rooms with no windows and come out with answers. I've watched men break, rebuild, and disappear. And through all of that, through sandstorms, gunfire, and silence so thick it felt like drowning, there were two things that kept me steady: a photo in my breast pocket and the sound of my daughter's laughter when I called home. Her name is Emily. She's 13 now. She used to draw hearts on every letter she sent me, even the ones where she was mad I missed her birthday. And her mother, Kate, she was the kind of woman who never needed to raise her voice to be heard. I met her in Tennessee on leave, and somehow we built a life between deployments. A girl like that, strong and beautiful, deserved better than half a husband. But she stayed. She raised Emily while I hunted ghosts. Or so I thought. The last time I left for overseas, something shifted. I didn't feel it at first. Nothing obvious, just smaller details. Calls that ended too fast, letters that got shorter, a photo she posted online, a school play I missed, where some other man stood next to them, smiling like he belonged. I noticed the guy before, sure. A neighbor, Tom Reeves. Lived 2 houses down, used to wave when I mowed the lawn, drove a silver truck and always had a 6-pack ready when people stopped by for barbecue. The kind of man who knew how to be liked without ever revealing anything real. Kate mentioned him once or twice, helped fix a broken window, stayed with Emily when she had the flu. It didn't raise alarms. Not then. I wanted to believe people were still good, but something kept nagging at me. I chalked it up to combat paranoia, the kind that never fully leaves you, even when you're sitting in the safest place on earth. Until the phone rang. It was near midnight where I was, in a country I'm still not allowed to name. I had just come back from a recon sweep, dirty, tired, eating a protein bar that tasted like wet cardboard. The call came through a secured line marked for personal emergencies. My heart went cold before I even picked up. The voice on the other end was Emily's, thin, trembling. She tried to sound normal at first, said she missed me, asked when I was coming home. But her voice cracked when she said it. And then there was a silence. Not the usual kind. This one had weight, like something was in the room with her. I heard footsteps in the background, a door creaking, and then the sound of water. Rushing. "Fast. Dad," she whispered. "He's not who you think he is." Then the line went dead. I sat there staring at the receiver, still pressed to my ear. I replayed the sentence in my mind until the words lost shape. "He's not who you think he is." I tried calling back. No answer. Within 15 minutes I had my gear packed and a plan forming in my head. 2 hours later, I was already moving. Orders be damned. You don't leave your child in danger. Not for a war, not for a flag, not for anything. But here's the thing they never tell you when you're trained to fight wars abroad. Sometimes the real enemy isn't on the battlefield. Sometimes he lives down the street. Sometimes he wears your slippers and eats at your table. And while you're out there trying to make the world safer for other people's families, he's destroying yours. By the time I touched down in the States, it had been nearly 36 hours since that call. I didn't sleep on the flight. I sat still, wide-eyed, muscles tense, mind chewing through every scenario like a dog with bone-dry nerves. I kept hearing her voice, that tremble, the pause, the final whisper. "He's not who you think he is." That wasn't just fear. That was betrayal. And whatever had happened after she hung up, I didn't know, and I didn't want to imagine. But I did. Over and over. When I landed, I didn't go home. I drove straight to the hospital. I had to call in a favor to find her. An old army buddy who still owed me for a night I pulled him out of fire in Kandahar. He worked in county dispatch now, had access to records that weren't meant for civilians. A little pressure, a little guilt, and he told me what I needed. Jane Doe, 13, pulled from the bay by 2 fishermen, hypothermia, minor injuries, admitted 3 nights ago. Emily. I found her in a pediatric ward, room 204. The walls were yellow. They always paint kids' wards yellow, like that somehow makes up for what the world does to children. She was asleep when I stepped inside. Hair wet from a recent shower, pale skin tight around her cheekbones, IV in her arm. The machine beeped slowly beside her, like a heartbeat just learning to trust again. I stood there and didn't move for 5 minutes. I don't know if I was afraid to wake her, or afraid she wouldn't want to see me. When her eyes did open, they found me instantly. No confusion. No blinking. Just locked in. Blue eyes that used to be filled with sunlight now edged with shadows. "Dad," she whispered, a word so small it could have been mistaken for wind. I stepped closer. She sat up slowly, and without another word, leaned forward and wrapped her arms around me. Her whole body shook. Not crying, just shaking, like her bones still remembered the cold. And then, quietly, as if she wasn't sure she had permission to tell the truth, she said, "He pushed me." The story came out in fragments. Tom had been around more and more after I deployed. At first, he brought flowers to Kate, fixed the screen door, took out the trash. Emily said she didn't mind him. He was funny, told her stories, made her feel like someone noticed. But then he started watching, asking questions about what she wore, commenting on her voice, her shape, her friendships. Kate told her not to be dramatic. "He's just being fatherly," she said. Then came the restrictions. No more sleepovers, no boys texting, then no phone at all. He set rules Kate didn't even question. He started coming to her room late at night, sitting too long on the edge of the bed. Nothing outright, not yet, but something wrong. The kind of wrong a child feels in her gut, even if she doesn't have the words for it. The night before the call, he took her out for ice cream, told her he wanted to talk about trust. They ended up by the bay. Cold wind, empty dock, no one around. He said things that didn't make sense, about loyalty, about men like her father who abandoned their families. He got angry when she pulled away, and then, without warning, he shoved her, backward, straight off the pier. The water was freezing. She went under fast, hit something, maybe a rock, maybe a piling, and surfaced coughing, gasping, screaming. He didn't help. He stood on the dock, just watching. His face was blank. "Dad," she said, eyes wide and distant, like I wasn't even real. It was a pair of early morning fishermen who heard her, pulled her out, called 911. She never saw Tom again. I couldn't speak. My jaw was clenched so hard it hurt. My hands were curled into fists without me realizing. I wanted to find him, that second, and erase him from the face of the earth. But Emily's hand found mine. "He said you'd never believe me," she whispered, "that you weren't coming home." I didn't say anything. I just held her. When Kate finally showed up at the hospital an hour later, she looked like she hadn't slept in days. She walked in hesitantly, saw me sitting by the bed, and froze. Her mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. "Jack." "I'm here," I said coldly. "Now tell me where he is." She flinched. I don't know." "You're lying." Kate looked at Emily, who turned her face to the window. That was all the answer I needed. For a moment, Kate's composure cracked. Her lips trembled and her hands started to shake. "I didn't know, Jack. I swear to God, I didn't know what he was." "You didn't want to know." That landed. She sat in the chair like her legs had given out, eyes red, shoulders curled inward like a girl caught in a storm she helped create. He said she was making it up, that she was jealous, that she hated me for moving on. And I wanted to believe him because I couldn't face what that meant. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. The next day, I signed Emily out of the hospital myself. I didn't ask permission. I didn't tell Kate where we were going. I bought a cheap burner phone, packed what little we had, and drove west. I didn't have a plan. Just one thought. Find Tom. Watch. Wait, and end this the way it needed to end. Not for revenge. For her. I didn't go back to my house. I didn't want to see what had become of it, what parts of it he'd claimed, what parts of me he had erased. I had the sick feeling that if I opened the front door, I'd find everything familiar covered in fingerprints that weren't mine. Instead, I drove north, to a small rental cabin outside of Elk Ridge. No neighbors, no reception. No one who asked questions, the kind of place where the sound of a gunshot might be mistaken for thunder, if heard at all. Emily stayed inside most of the time. She was healing physically, yes, but the bruises on her arms weren't the kind that hurt most. The real bruises were somewhere deeper, in places you can't wrap in gauze or ice. She barely spoke. She read books, stared out the window, sat on the porch with a blanket around her shoulders and watched the wind ripple through the pine trees. I didn't push her. I didn't ask questions she wasn't ready to answer. I just made sure she was fed, warm, and knew, every hour of every day, that I wasn't leaving again. Ever. At night, when she slept, I worked. I wasn't a soldier anymore. I was something else now. Something colder. I told myself it wasn't vengeance. It was protection. It was strategy. It was war. The first thing I did was watch. Tom had a pattern. He always had. Men like him don't change their skin. They just find new ways to wear it. He'd moved into my house permanently after Emily was hospitalized. That alone told me everything I needed. He wasn't hiding. He was staking a claim. There was no shame, no retreat, just boldness, like a man who thought he had already won. He drove Kate's car, wore my jacket, used the grill I installed with my own hands. I watched from the tree line across the road. 3 nights in a row. Motionless, wrapped in camouflage, binoculars steady on the windows. The man had a routine. Same late dinner, same porch cigarette, same glass of bourbon. It was like he wanted to be seen. But what struck me most was how empty the house looked. Not physically. There were lights, voices, movement. But there was something hollow about it. Kate moved like a ghost. I only caught glimpses of her, pacing, turning lights off, standing still in doorways as if she wasn't sure what to do with her own breath. He had sunk his claws deep. I needed more. Information. Leverage. A reason. Something that would justify what I already knew I was going to do. So I started digging. I visited an old friend from my recon days, someone who owed me silence more than explanations. He helped me access sealed court records from across 3 counties. I followed names that appeared again and again. Women who left suddenly. Police reports that vanished. A restraining order filed by a teacher in Arizona, then withdrawn. Another filed by a teen girl in Colorado, no follow-up. A small-town incident involving a missing dog and a burned-out shed, ruled accidental, but the timeline didn't add up. Tom Reeves wasn't a good man gone bad. He was a predator in camouflage, a skilled one. He moved through lives like a shadow, charming, careful, calculated, until someone noticed something off. Then he vanished before consequences could catch up. Except this time, he'd chosen the wrong family. I found his weakness almost by accident, not in his habits, but in his pride. He was careless now, arrogant, and most of all, alone. No friends, no allies. He didn't trust others, only manipulated them. People like that always think they're smarter than everyone else, and that's when they start making mistakes. It came to me on a rainy afternoon. I was watching the house from a different angle, closer this time, using the blind spot between security cameras I knew I'd installed myself. I saw Tom open the garage. Inside was my old toolbox, the one I'd kept locked. It was open. Inside, on the top tray, was a hunting knife. Not mine. That blade wasn't meant for deer. That's when I knew. He was preparing for something. He wasn't afraid I'd return. He wanted me to. He thought he could win. That's what gave me the edge. I started planning. I found an old work site where I'd done seasonal fencing jobs years ago. Remote. Surrounded by timber. One road in, no cameras, no cell service. It hadn't been touched in over 6 years. The cabin on the property was crumbling, but the foundation was strong enough. I cleaned it out, stocked it with what I needed. Rope, gloves. One small generator for light. Nothing unnecessary. No weapons. I didn't want this to be about tools. I wanted it to be personal. The bait was simple. An anonymous message, a burner phone left in his mailbox. One sentence. You didn't finish the job. You left her alive. I knew his kind. He'd take it as a threat. He'd assume it was from a witness. He'd come alone to shut it down. To do what he always did when someone stood in his way. He wouldn't tell Kate. He'd want control. So I waited, and 2 nights later, he came. I heard the tires before I saw the lights. A silver truck, parked exactly where I'd hoped. He got out slowly. No flashlight, no hesitation, just a quiet, careful step through pine needles and moss. I watched from the shadows. He entered the cabin, looked around, found nothing. Then I stepped inside behind him. I shut the door, locked it. He turned, for the first time since this all began. Since the dock, since the fall, since the hospital. I looked him in the eyes, and I saw it. Not fear, not guilt, just calculation. He thought he had time. He didn't. He looked at me like I was a problem to solve. Not a man, not a father, just an obstacle. You came back, he said casual, like we were meeting for coffee. I didn't answer. I took one step forward. He flinched, just a flicker in the eye, not in the body, but I saw it. That was all I needed. You hurt her, I said. He shrugged. You weren't there. There it was. The truth beneath the mask. No denial, no excuse. Just the belief that I had forfeited my right to protect her the day I left. Like absence made it acceptable. He didn't understand. My distance was a choice made in duty. His presence was a weapon cloaked in smiles. He stepped toward me. Slow. Careful. I noticed the blade on his hip. He didn't reach for it. He wanted me to see it, to know he was armed, to think it mattered. You think this makes you a hero? He said. You're just like me. You wait until it's easy. You don't know a goddamn thing about me. Then I moved. It didn't take long. I wasn't here for theatrics. I wasn't here to teach a lesson. This wasn't a movie where the villain monologues and the hero hesitates. This was real life. And in real life, when your child is thrown into the ocean by the hands of a man she was told to trust, you don't debate morality. You end it. He went for the knife. Too slow. I slammed his hand against the wall before the blade cleared the sheath. It clattered to the floor. I didn't let him recover. I grabbed him by the collar, spun him, pinned him to the rotting beam at the center of the room. His breath came fast. For the first time, I saw what he really was. Small. Weak. Afraid of someone who saw him clearly. You don't get to haunt her anymore, I said low. You don't get to walk around with her fear on your hands. He spat at me. Missed. I didn't raise my fist. I didn't need to. I leaned in close, so close I could see the sweat bead on his forehead, and I whispered, She survived you. That's your failure. You lost. Then I finished it, and when it was done, I carried his body out into the forest. No witnesses. No trace. The earth took him without ceremony. Quiet. Final. Beak morning, it was as if he had never existed. I returned to the cabin. Emily was asleep when I got back, curled under a blanket, one hand clutching the book she'd been reading before I left. I watched her chest rise and fall. Soft, steady, safe. The next few weeks passed quietly. Kate left town without saying goodbye. I didn't stop her. She had her pain to live with, and I had mine. We weren't the same people anymore. Emily and I moved again. Small town, by the coast. Nothing flashy, just air that smelled like salt and mornings that felt like second chances. She started laughing again. The first time I heard it, it came out sudden and wild. Startled me so much I dropped a mug. She'd found a crab on the beach with one claw and named him Sergeant Pinch. Thought it was the funniest thing in the world. I laughed, too. Then I cried when she wasn't looking. She joined a fishing club at school, learned how to tie knots, fix lures. She even won a ribbon for biggest catch one weekend. I told her it was beginner's luck. She told me I was just mad because her fish was bigger than mine. Sometimes we sat in silence on the pier, just the sound of waves and birds and the occasional flick of water against the dock. She'd cast her line, and I'd watch her. Not the rod. Not the sea. Her. One afternoon, she turned to me and said, "You didn't have to come back, but you did." I looked at her. "I'll always come back." And I meant it. That day, she caught nothing. Didn't care. Said the sky was enough. She wasn't afraid of water anymore. Wasn't afraid of shadows. And the look in her eyes told me what I needed to know. The mission was over. She was alive. Not just breathing. Alive. As the sun went down, I watched her silhouette against the ocean, her hair catching the last gold light, her shoulders relaxed, her face at peace. And I knew, in that stillness, that this was the only war that ever mattered. The one I fought at home. And won. For her. Life. It's not clean or fair or scripted. Sometimes the battlefield isn't across the ocean. It's right at your kitchen table. Sometimes the enemy isn't a stranger. It's the one who brings your family dinner. And sometimes the hardest thing isn't fighting. It's coming home and realizing you have to fight again in a way you never trained for. I'm not proud of everything I've done, but I'd do it all again. Because she's still here. She laughs. She lives. And that's worth everything. If you're going through something, betrayal, loss, silence, don't give up. Don't lose your soul. Do what you have to do, but never stop being human. If this story meant something to you, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. There's more to come, real stories about real people surviving impossible things. And hey, tell me in the comments, what would you fight for if it came down to it? Thanks for being here. See you in the next story.